Hello viewers, my name is artist Diyah Najah, and I want to take the time out to first thank Johns Creek Art Center for giving me this opportunity for the month of October 1st through 31st, year of 2020. I will be doing a solo show. My solo show is called ADHD and Other Gifts. Alright? I'll tell you a little bit about that title as we go on and I get a chance to talk with you. So essentially what I do is I'm a printmaker as well as a mixed media artist. And those are two different worlds, but they both live inside of me. It's not unusual for an artist to be multidisciplinary, and these are the forms that I use most. My mixed media allows me to take the sounds and the cacophony and the stimuli and the movement and the rhythms, the smells, the touch, the feels, the colors that are constantly running through my mind, clashing through my mind. And it gives me a healthy outlet to get that out. The printmaking is very regimented. It's very step-by-step process. It's almost linear in a sense. Can't really deviate to the left or to the right in my form of printmaking, which I specifically work in, which is relief carving. And so that side of me gets to come out. It's calming for me because it's regimented. It helps to slow me down. It helps me to align myself with processes. And quite honestly, I feel successful when I get to do the printmaking. So I honor all sides of myself, and hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight into why I titled the show what I did. It's after one of my really signature pieces. It's a printmaking piece, monochromatic, called ADHD and Other Gifts. I want to dedicate this whole experience to the students that I teach, and also to all adults and students and children with disabilities. I want to encourage you to lean into your gifts. Had it not been for my art, I would not have found any confidence or any feelings of success in my life. It's all due to me leaning into my gifts, and my gift is mainly art. And as you'll see, hopefully teaching. So throughout this process, I'm going to do 4 videos, not including my introduction and supply list video. 4 videos, 4 parts. I'm going to create a mixed media piece, and I'm going to create it from something called Egungun. E-G-U-N. G-U-N. I always wanted to do it. I actually wanted to sculpt it. Who told me I was a sculptor? I don't know. We'll see. But I'm going to go ahead and use the mediums that I'm familiar with and that I love right now and create a pretty large scale Egungun piece. I just want to acclimate you very quickly to how these cameras are going to work. So I'm going to be using all parts of my brain because I'm going to be doing the technical side, and in a minute I'll be showing you the art. So hold tight while I just show you how this is going to look. Here are my hands, okay? These are the close-ups that you'll get to see. So this is the view that will allow you to see what I'm doing as I'm doing it. And then this view, just so that you don't get disoriented in this process, is the gallery view where you can see me talking. You can also see me working, okay? But I'm going to mainly stick to the close-ups. I want to share with you my philosophy while I share with you my philosophy. My philosophy is nothing is a waste. Nothing is a waste. Every attempt is a success, even when we have quote-unquote failure. And because I believe in that, I don't discard anything. Quite often, if we don't fit the mold, if we don't learn the way that people say we're supposed to learn, if we don't communicate the way people say that we're supposed to communicate, sometimes we don't achieve the successes in particular settings, socially, academically. I don't know if you've ever gone through that, but that's been my background. And so nothing is a waste. And I'm going to show you something that really might be considered trash. Maybe some people see this and they see trash. I don't see trash. I see opportunity. I see with the right setting and the right situation, this piece right here can become something remarkable. I'm going to show you some of my papers because these are some of the things we're going to be doing. These are not necessarily my handmade papers, but definitely some techniques that I have played with. I've used watercolor, and some of you may know how I got the texture on this surface that is two-dimensional, and I'll tell you right away. I used watercolor. In this case, I really enjoy using watercolor markers. These particularly are the Arteza brand. It's the only brand I've ever used, and I really like them. I'm using salt. And sometimes I might be using some alcohol ink. Okay, and you can find some things like this in the scrapbook section at your local art store. It's quite pricey in my opinion. And you always want to use the best quality materials because I am a professional artist, and so I do want my artwork to be archival, but you can make this. You can make it. Like you see here. I went ahead and made my own. All right? Some other things that are really important to know. This right here is polyurethane. Okay? This is oil-based, and when you are choosing your polyurethane, make sure that you pay attention to the sheen. This one is clear gloss, so you're going to have a high sheen to it. I do use the exterior. It is oil-based, so when you're working with this, it can slightly change the color. I welcome that. I welcome all of these organic things. Now, the first time I did it, of course, it was a surprise. Now that I know that it does it, I don't mind. I make accommodations for the way that it shows up. I want to show you some of my other papers. This here is one of my favorite papers. This is, can you hear that? This right here is textured paper, and this is acrylic paint, and of course I had to do the obligatory art paint splash, which gives it some movement, some music. Let me show you. Yes, do I use printed paper? I sure do. I sure do. I will go and use that in a minute. If it gives me the image that I'm looking for, I certainly will bring this into some of my pieces of artwork. This right here is possibly what would be considered reject. This is from printmaking, and so this is water-based printmaking ink, and that's why this comes into play. I go ahead and give it a coat, a nice even coat. Let it dry. I go ahead and give it another nice even coat. Why do I do that? Because when I bring in some of my other supplies, especially if they're water-based, I don't want to smear. And so let me show you again some of the other supplies that I use. When I'm collaging, I use good old Mod Podge. I love Mod Podge. Remember, again, this is really important. Don't want you to find out the way I found out. There's different mattes or different lusters, okay? So you make sure to get the one you want. This right here happens to be gloss, and this one is matte, all right? So I personally like to mix it up. I like to play with light. Light is definitely something that you're going to get when you're using gloss. So remember, you want to seal anything that is water-based, because when we're putting more liquid on top of it, it will smear, and you don't want that. You can do a piece work for 6 or 7 hours and then smear it right when it's at the end. No, I won't let you have that experience. I learned it for you. Right here, what's this? Trash? No, it's not. To me, this is not trash. This is nothing but time and opportunity. I'm going to use this. And this is one of the relief carvings I did. This is the Sankofa bird, okay? It's a Ghanaian bird. It means go back and fetch it. It features a bird turning its neck backwards and picking up a little seed, okay? And that right there is just a metaphor for reaching back to that which you've forgotten. One of my favorite meanings for Sankofa is it is not taboo to go back and fetch what you have left behind. And I'm just going to show you a few more pieces I've created. Playing with paper. Play with the paper. Play with it. This right here, I wet that paper and I balled it up. I mean, I balled it up. Balled it up. And then I let it dry a little. And then I undid it. And then guess what I did? I sprayed it again. Didn't tell you I sprayed it with water the first time. I sprayed it again and I balled it up again. And when you're doing that to paper, it starts to become more like a fabric, really soft. And then I opened it back up and I just spread it out. And I'll be honest with you, I probably put some acrylic paint on my hand and smeared it lightly right over this paper. And I love this texture, okay? Here's another piece of relief carving. And remember, always spray and seal that if you did not use oil-based ink. In this case, a lot of my rejects are water-based ink. Now, I'm going to share with you today a few of my techniques. I don't know if I can own them because I probably looked at something on YouTube or looked really closely at another piece of artwork and said, that is absolutely beautiful and I would like to include that in my work. And so I'm going to start with some watercolor. All right. I'm going to show you, I am working on, this is just mixed media paper. The basic mixed media paper is non-acidic because remember, anything you create, you want it to be archival quality, all right? And especially when you're working with collage, you can definitely seal things. Some people even use magazines. I don't know that I'm going to do that in the piece, but I just wanted to show you some in-process pieces, all right? These are still wet, and so I am going to not waste all of this white space. But I'm going to show you how I've done it. Again, I enjoy using these markers. These are Arteza. And I'm just going to haphazardly, or so it seems, put some color onto this paper. This is just watercolor. I'm looking for a particular family of colors, but I definitely want to add some contrast. If you are using these markers and you hit a wet spot, it will most definitely lighten the ink. But I want to show you, here's a dry patch. You can actually go over the dry patch as well. Why would I do that? because I like to take the time. I love time-consuming artwork when I need to slow down, when I need to enjoy the process and really get into it, when I need to experience the layers. And watercolor layers so beautifully. The depth created from layering watercolor. I would encourage you to really take the time. As I told you, there are no mistakes and nothing is wasted. So have fun with this process. Well, what if you don't have watercolor markers? Well, if you don't have watercolor markers, it's okay. As you can see, I'm just going around. I'm layering, I'm building it out. Sometimes, for fun, I like to put a surprise color. Why? Because that's me in real life. Very rarely will you find consistency in my mind. I'm always going from one thought to the next thought, and I'm always concerned with tying it all together. And so I give myself the freedom in my artwork to be my most authentic self. And my most authentic self struggles with consistency. I like to allow myself the room and the freedom to explore. And so I've gone ahead and done enough just for you to see what I'm going to do next. Hopefully, I showed you some of the materials that I'm using. I don't remember if I did or did not, but I'm going to pull it back out. One thing I really must say when building, remember contrast. That makes for some really interesting experiences with watercolor. And so I feel like I've given enough. So I'm going to go ahead and play with the water right now and that other supply, which I may or may not have forgotten, which is coarse sea salt. I feel like I might have told you about it. So let's go ahead and get my spray bottle, whoever that may be, and let me spray a little bit of water on there. I'm getting a message about this battery, so hold tight and let me make sure that we do not lose each other. Now I'm sure that we won't be losing each other, so I'm just going to say thank you, computer, for not dying on me. So that also gave a little second for us to see what happens with that water, okay? I'm just going to spray a little bit. I'm not going to overspray. What's an overspray? You'll have to play around and figure that out for yourself. Just a little bit. And I'm going to bring in my salt. I especially want to make that salt fall anywhere where I see some water pooling. So I'm a teacher. I'm a special education teacher. I enjoy what I do, and I enjoy who I work with. Essentially, I'm working with younger versions of myself. And I definitely want my students to understand one thing, if there's one thing, and that is to lean into your gifts. So I'm a teacher, but I'm not a science teacher. And I didn't think I could explain to you what this salt does, but actually I can. It dries the area where it's falling. And so it's going to create some interesting and fun textures. Now, this is watercolor. And so if you work with watercolor, I know that you know that watercolor dries much lighter than, give it a little bit more water. Watercolor dries much lighter than it looks right now. So I don't want to lift it too high, although I do enjoy a good run. If you haven't had a chance to look at the virtual exhibition, please do that. It is on exhibition from October 1st to October 31st, year 2020. So I'm just moving that around, blending those colors. All right, and I don't waste paper, so I'm going to come back and fill in that white later, but for the purpose of this video, I'm going to go ahead and put it to the side. I'm going to bring another piece up that I was working on. Now this one definitely is a runner, and by runner, I mean it's got a lot of liquid on it. And so in situations like that, I let it dry that way. Yes, I do. But sometimes I can take some of that moisture off. I can use a sponge and just dab. Sometimes I can take a rag and I can twist it and dab. I can ball it up and dab. Notice I'm not smearing and I'm not rubbing, because that's not what I intend to do right now. And I can just go ahead and pull up some of that extra moisture if I wanted to. And so what this is right here is a piece of paper, and I think this is BFK Reeves paper. I might have got a little stain on it at some point. You know I'm not going to throw it away. I've explained that. And so I've done multiple layers of watercolor on this. And I could stop right here if I wanted to. Or if I wanted to, I could put a little bit more salt on it. The more salt, the more texture. And if I need to remind you what that can look like, I'll pull this back out for you. More salt, the more movement, the more texture. All right? And wait to make a two-dimensional piece interesting. And there's another way to make it interesting too. I can take this piece right now. Why would I do that? Why would I do that? I can ball this piece up just like that. And I could treat it as if it's discarded, but it's not. I'm going to open it back up. And now I have added a whole new element of texture to my paper. Okay? I think I'll ball it up a little bit more. You can do whatever you want. And I have explained that the more that I can ball this up, I can make it look like leather. If I wanted to, when this was dry, I can go ahead and put my Mod Podge on top of it, and it would look like a nice leather, a nice worn leather, if I wanted to. Let me pull this up so that you can see what's going on right now. All right? It's doing some lovely things. And I'm going to finish out this piece. The only thing about doing this paper is you want to make sure you do enough. Because what if you love it and you don't have enough of it? That's why I do a thing called paper day. Paper day is when I just go ham and I create paper and I just don't stop. I just make paper all day. But of course I'm not making the paper, but I am designing the paper. Here's another one that I was working on. To me, yes, it's warm, but for me, it's not as interesting as I would like it. I will drop a little bit more salt on it, but I'm going to bring in some more color. If you look up the egungun, you will see that there is no shortage of color. And remember, I told you salt dries. So go ahead and scoot all that salt out the way if you're going to bring out your watercolor markers, okay? I don't waste this paper, so I'm going to fill this out. I may not fill this out throughout this video. But again, I think I said earlier, what happens if you don't have watercolor markers? You can use watercolor. I'll show you in just a second. Remember, I like to make it alive. I like to do shocks of color when you don't expect it. Definitely balancing that color out and definitely layering the color. The more you layer, the richer it will become. I love these Arteza watercolor markers. I've seen their tutorials. I don't use them the way that I've seen them used. And that's okay. Layering in these colors, going lighter. Can you see the way that it moves? One thing that I like to experience in my art, besides doing what I want, is doing what I want. I like to mix my colors up, okay? I like to play around in ways that we might be told we can't play. This is art. This is your free space. Free your mind and just feel it. If I haven't told you before, definitely bringing that contrast. So I'm going to go ahead and start to use some liquid watercolors, and I found these and I quite enjoyed them. I really enjoyed these. Actually, these were I think they were being discarded, and they're pretty good quality, actually. Bring them in. Shevinigen red medium. Shevinigen. I don't know. Is that German? I don't know. But I know I like this paint very much. When you're doing mixed media collage, there is no one way. And that's a story that I definitely like to tell. There is no one way. There are many ways, okay? Like for instance, I'm spraying some of this paper before I get the paint on. That's what I'm gonna do in this corner. And so this paint is gonna do something different in this corner. I'm gonna spray it a little bit more and I'm gonna let it drip towards the center. Okay? I like for this paint and this paper to become fabric, in my opinion. Maybe something that we will see worn. There is no one way. And because I'm putting this on rather thick, it's gonna have a gloss and a sheen when it dries. And that's gonna play nicely over this dry look of the watercolor marker. Just play with it. And then I'm gonna come on to this side, which I did not wet, and I'm gonna paint it, and it's gonna look like an acrylic. You can do what you wanna do. Remember what I said, if you feel like you're gonna love this piece, then you definitely want to create more than one. More than one, depending on how big your art piece is gonna be. I think I'm gonna play with my spray bottle a little bit. So you can obviously see there's a holistic element to what I'm doing. I think I'll bring some more of this salt in. Now, when I'm putting the salt onto the thicker side, of course, the reaction is not going to be the same as the watery side. But it is going to make an indentation so that when it dries and you scrape it off, you're going to have a texture there. The more water, I'm going to finish off my piece like that. I'm going to let it bleed and drip into each other. And that's how I'm going to let this dry. Obviously, you're working on a surface that you don't mind getting dirty. I have an actual studio, a home studio, but do you think I'm working in it? No. I'm in my living room. So we're gonna let this dry. I'm gonna do a little bit more salt. And you can see when that salt is falling, what it's doing texturally. And it's gonna be very rich, very rich. So as I told you, the salt is pretty much taking away some of that moisture. And go ahead and put that to the side and let it dry. Here's one of the previous pieces we were working on. Remember, when it's all said and done, it's going to dry much lighter. And then here is the textured piece. This is the one where we created the extra depth. I want you to hold tight for a second while I set up for some acrylic paper. Hold tight. I wanted to show you where we're going, just so you can get an idea. So again, here are my quote-unquote rejects. They are not. These are the elements that are going to make the work come alive. Here's some printmaking, laying it on top of some of my watercolor. I love how the colors are playing against each other. I do what I want. I can bring in any kind of pattern that I want. Yes, my work is very busy. Yes, my work has a lot of rhythm and a lot of movement, and that's what you'll expect, especially from this Egungun piece. So I'm going to bring in some of the acrylics. Here's an acrylic right here. Here's an old piece I had called the Peanut Gallery. One of the beauties of being a printmaker is I can take from some of my old pieces and bring them in to create my new stories. And I can layer them and make them move and do whatever I want. And I want to bring in just a little bit more. This right here is some gouache. And again, we're continuing to work with pattern, we're continuing to work with colors, and we're continuing to work with texture. And I know that you cannot see how it all goes together, but in this process you will. So I hope that you come with me next week while we talk about some printmaking techniques so that you can get some texture on your own. I hope to see you then. Thank you for watching.